volunteers down here. So we're going to do this. This is the third of our presentations that we're giving for the year, for the fall. We'll do some more in the spring. We did one on DAR, the Grove City chapter of the DAR, and then we did one on houses of Grove City and Wolf Creek Township. This is the third one. This is the third one in the history of the Bashline Hospital. For those who have never been here, most of you probably have, if you haven't been here, this was the old Travelers Hotel, two-story hotel with 13 or 14 rooms upstairs, I guess. Each of the rooms upstairs, we put in, one of the rooms we put in hospital or medical room, college room. We've designated rooms and put things in up there. And you're welcome afterwards or to come to go ahead and look around the building, go upstairs, wherever you want to go. We're open Tuesday through Saturday from 12 to 3. I do want to tell a little story about today. Doug was down, they were getting things ready today, and Janie and Tom had left and Doug had left, and Jane and I were looking for something, and the doorbell rang. And so Jane answered the doorbell, and there was an older gentleman, and his daughter had come in, and I guess was asking about the Bashline Hospital, something about the Bashline. So Jane invited them in, and they did look around, and his name was Dr. John Domi-Ani, and he's from Warren, Ohio. He did his residency here, somewhere between 1956 and 58. So they came in, and they were grateful. And they thought they would be here tonight, but he was, I would guess, he was late 80s or 90s, so maybe they got tired. So maybe they got tired and didn't come. But we were hoping they could come tonight and visit, just by chance or whatever. They dropped in, and it was a good time to drop in.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Well, tonight then, I'm just going to present to you Doug Bashline, and he's going to do a presentation for the history of the Bashline Hospital.
And I'm going to tell you everything I know about medicine because I just stayed at one of those Holiday Inn Expresses and that made you an expert. You've already been welcome. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about you. Some of this Gary thought was a little technical. That's because I was in the aviation industry, and I'm going to use some terminology, but I tried to keep it as simple as I can. So I originally wrote this for Gary to give, so I'm going to struggle with some of the wording that I put. So it doesn't sound like I'm a great guy. I graduated from Grove City College in 1970. Well, in 1970, as you remember, the Vietnam War was still going on, and the lottery became what the draft was at the time, and that is the only lottery I have ever won. So I knew where I was going, so I didn't take any interviews. I marched smartly over to Newcastle to the Air Force recruiter, and I said, I want to be an Air Force pilot. And then hopefully I could get into that, and then I would get to pick and choose what I was going to do relative to the events in Southeast Asia. So I was off to officer training school in Texas, and after 3 months there, they send you to pilot training if you qualify, which I did. That takes about a year. Following pilot training, you go through some survival schools and so on, and then off to your assignment. My first assignment was C-130 cargo aircraft, believe it or not, based in Saigon. So, talk about coincidence. Well, subsequent to that, that lasted about a year. Most of the Vietnam tours were about a year. After that, I came back to Strategic Air Command and flew the KC-135, which was an air refueling tanker. That only lasted a short time, and that unit went out of business. And that was located over at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio at the time. And the time frame is about 1975-ish, somewhere in that area. Come on in. And you're only missing the technical part. We'll get to the Holiday Inn Express stuff. So anyway, I moved right across the base to a flight test wing. That might be the best job I ever had. So we did some air research and flight test profiles, things that were oriented toward a military effort, and other things that were actually oriented toward commercial flying, which now, having experienced it, I know some of the things that we worked on in the test wing at Wright-Patterson are now actually being used by airline pilots today. So that was somewhat gratifying. Anyway, I left the Air Force in 1977, and at that time I'm looking for an airline job, and I joined the Air National Guard in Pittsburgh, and again flew the KC-135 and refueled airplanes all around the world. But in a couple months after I got out of the Air Force, Lucia and I got married. And then I went off to training and was away quite a bit. But I flew for the Allegheny Commuter, some of you may have been on. Every once in a while, I flew from Du Bois to Franklin and down to Pittsburgh. And then I got a job with United Airlines. They furloughed 800 people after 2 years with that airline, and I transitioned nicely right over to U.S. Airways, where I spent about 28 years with an absolutely flawless career with them, retired in 2008. So I'm going to show you quickly some of these airplane pictures, simply to convince you that I really only know what I learned at that Holiday Inn Express. Truly. We'll get to that. Anyway, after retirement in 2008, I became a volunteer at the Butler VA facility for a 6-year period. And then some of you may know me now as the co-chair for Grove City's YMCA Capital Campaign. So finally, Lucia and I are proud grandparents of 4 little children, and that's what we do today. So that's pretty much my bio. Let me learn a little bit about you. I know I'm going to get some hands on some of these. Was anybody in here born at the Bashline Hospital? I was not. Dad was a resident in Florida, and I was born in Jackson Memorial. Congratulations to you. It seems to have worked for you. Were any of you employed at the Bashline Hospital? I helped the maintenance men. I created the situations that caused the maintenance requirements. Your mom was?
My mom was,
Oh,
yeah.
that's good. Did anybody receive medical care at the Bashline Hospital?
And then you walked up the aisle and paid Mrs. King your $2.
You want to get that ledger and tell her what year that was? By the way, can you hear me in the back? Okay. Usually not one of my problems, being heard. Has anyone been a volunteer at the hospital?
Andy Striper.
Yes. Okay, I like it. So what is a hospital? Well, I don't know if you remember Ed McDonald. Ed McDonald was an administrator back in the 70s. Well, according to him, the way he liked to put it was, we like to think of our hospital as more than mortar and bricks, but one made up of individuals, each making a valuable contribution to the health and welfare of our patients and the community at large. I think that kind of sums up what the hospital does, what every hospital attempts to do, but I was glad to find something in print that Ed, one of the administrators, had to say. Now bear with me while I fumble around with 3 pieces of paper in 2 hands. So let's get started here. Okay, we're going to blast through some of these pictures. Okay, these are 2 trainers. That's what I ended up in Vietnam. Flew that one to Hanoi and back. That's the tanker. We're still using it. It's almost older than I am. It's a 1955 vintage aircraft. Oops. That's what they do. They refuel bombers and fighters and so on. That was a flight test aircraft used at Wright-Pat. They had 28 airplanes. Every one of them was a little different. Modification of a, let me sit down so I get out of your way. Modification of a Boeing 707. My most prized mission was to help launch the 2 Voyager space probes in 1977. They're still out there in interstellar space providing reducible data for whoever's reducing the data. That test wing also had all kinds of configurations in some of the airplanes. This is just one example. Okay, and this isn't about airplanes. I'm just trying to make the point that this is my life. Okay, this is my 40 years. Doctors and nurses and employees in the hospital, they had their 40 years. And then now we're going to talk a little bit about dates and places and times. And there's retirement day, and my lovely wife got to go along to Rome in my last trip, and as a co-pilot. No. Everybody's like, really? Okay, so, but they had a nice cozy seat for her in the back. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? Here's what we're going to talk a little bit about. I hope to be able to give you some historical perspective, and certainly any discussion about Bashline Memorial Hospital or any of their affiliate hospitals, previous ones that is, you can't do much talk about that until you discuss the man, O.O. Bashline, and the philosophy of medical treatment he brought to this community, which back in his day was new. It was a new idea. We'll talk a little bit about his nephew, Walter F. Rossman. I have to talk about osteopathy. I did plenty of research on this. I kind of sort of knew what it was. If you've been to when you have a sore back, you call an osteopath, right? You do not call a chiropractor. Really? Because there are osteopaths. They still get the manipulative treatment. They still have training, but people aren't aware of it. So we're going to talk about osteopathy a little bit. It's alive and well. We're going to talk about some dates, and we have pictures that are upstairs actually, of the first locations for the clinics and hospitals and so on. We're going to talk about the clinic and the Memorial Hospital. Then we'll talk a little wee bit about the merger and the legacy that Bashline Rossman Hospital left for this community. So, let's get started here. Let's see if I can not make mistakes. Okay, Warren Osborne Bashline, a.k.a. O.O. Anybody not know that? Everybody called him O.O. And he called all his female employees sisters. It was in the name. Born next to Snively's Corner in Salem Township, Clarion County. He didn't grow up as a farmer, but apparently his folks had some farming interest in the area. I know he had one here, but he had some experience on the farm. Then he became a teacher and a principal. I think he did some of that even in West Virginia. Then, of course, he became a physician. And to become a physician, I think you need some special motivations. And we're going to talk about some of his motives. Let's talk about the first one. He wrote a little book. Okay, has anybody seen the little book that he published? A little black and white book. It's here, and it's for your perusal if you want to look at it. But I read through that, and he tells a story about Jack the dog. Does everybody know B.J. Wayne, Dr. Wayne? Okay, one of my good buddies. She was concerned that I was going to concentrate on Jack the dog. She's heard me talk about him before. And she said, why don't you just forget about Jack the dog and talk about osteopathy. That's what you're talking about. You're supposed to be the expert. All they can express. Well, Jack was a dog that showed up on O.O.'s family porch when he was a younger person. And they befriended each other and became fast buddies. And I think it was on a winter afternoon, they took a stroll out in the woods, and it's a little hilly up there around the Shippensville area. And the dog apparently slid onto a stream through the ice. when OO recovers the dog has a hindquarter injury and limps. This limping went on for a while to the point where OO became a little concerned. So he took the dog to a local physician, a friend of the family, somebody apparently who shows up with a bag and takes care of you at home. Anyway, he's on a first name basis with him, took the dog over there, and the doctor looked at him and asked OO to hold the biting end while the doctor worked on the tail end, and manipulated the hind quarter of the dog. And the dog got up and ran away. He didn't abscond, but he was okay. I think that was probably an impression left on a young mind about the dog was in pain, you didn't need any chemical type medicines, etc. What did you do? Where did you get that? Another motivation was the trial and error of chemistry back in the day. We're talking the 1800s. Think about the Civil War and those operating rooms you've seen in movies and so on. Pretty gruesome. Okay, they didn't know a whole lot about septic environment, aseptic environment. In other words, germs. Okay, so they use the same saw for everybody, for legs and all that. But the things that they used, the arsenics and the opiate derivatives and so on that they used to treat and remedy maladies, oftentimes made symptoms worse and occasionally killed the patient. And from what I read, that just drove him wild. So I'm going to have some comments from him about that. He was educated in first Des Moines and then Kirksville Schools of Osteopathy, trained under Dr. A.T. Still, who we're going to have to talk about because he's the founder of osteopathy, and the doctor trained under him. We have a pretty interesting picture of that event. He graduated in 1907 from the American School of Osteopathic Surgeons. And this is a picture of OO at various times in his life. However, those are not the pictures. That's not the image that I remember. I'm not sure who that would be if I walked into the room when I was 10-year-old. That is the man I remember. Okay? Anyway, that's OO up front with Wayne on the left, Woodrow, Woody, and Don, his three sons. My three sons. And I certainly can't leave out OO's lovely wife, Frances Bell Kopp Bashline, a.k.a. Grandma for me, Fanny to you.
My mother did housework for her before my mother got married, so I'm glad to see her picture.
Oh, good. Well, I was tickled that I found that picture. And I have other pictures of her at home.
She said she taught my mom to dust.
She probably taught me a few chores too. Incidentally, I skipped a whole section of this intentionally because I knew it was going to be a little lengthy on the introductions. But if you have an anecdote, something near and dear to your heart, and any kind of a story that you want to tell, just raise your hand, interrupt, and you're not interrupted. We're all in the same boat here. So if we're talking about something, hopefully we can.
You said about Dr. O. I had a very dear friend, was born in 1900 up in Nova Scotia. And then she traveled with her dad. He did some dams across Canada. She settled here, and she went to Dr. O. And he said, "Girl, stand up against that wall." She thought, if I ever get out of here, I'll never. They became fast friends.
Avenue to health right there.
And he looked at her and he told her she had thyroid trouble. I said, today they had machines and tests, and then wrong with you?
No. Things that I've read suggest that he was a pretty good diagnostician. Holiday Express, that's kind of above my pay grade.
Doug,
Yep.
regarding Fanny,
Yes.
I had an experience with Fanny
Oh,
and
boy.
Bashline. We lived just up the street on Washington Boulevard, and when I was about 5, I stuck an eraser in my ear.
Let's see it.
So my dad took it down the street to Bashline's house and took me in, and looked at me, and he said, "Fanny, bring a crochet needle." And so she brought it, and he took it and took out that eraser out of my ear.
Just another reason there's a great woman behind everything. That's great. See you, Grandma. Let's back up to this. I have a couple things I want to talk about. The trial and error. I'm going to have to read a couple things to you. Some of it's my wording, some of it's quotes. I'm going to be doing that periodically. Simply stated, O.O. learned that symptoms were manifestations of disease, not the actual disease. By treating only symptoms, he felt doctors did not take into consideration the cause which produced the symptoms in the first place. He challenged the early assumptions that the trial and error application of drugs cured the sick. He concluded that if doctors had to experiment with the drug, that the treatment was most unreliable, unproven, and useless, as well as damaging to the sick person while the ravages of the disease continued. He learned, if you can't do good, don't do harm. Almost sounds like a Hippocratic oath. Okay. Okay, O.O.'s nephew, this guy. Anybody recognize Walter F. Rossman besides me?
He delivered it.
You end up in the right place?
Well, then in 1950, he took out my appendix.
He took mine out too. What a coincidence. We now have a lifetime bond.
That was-
Yeah, he did that.
Well, I was gonna tell you, and I did tell you on the phone the other day, up at the mall at Cranberry over in Venango County, we knew this lady Mary. She worked in the hardware department. I knew she was from Knox. When I found out her name was Rossman, I asked her if she was related to Dr. Walter. So she went home. Here, he was her great uncle.
Yeah, small world. Yeah. He was a pretty gentle soul. He became an ENT, find ear, nose, and throat. Did some surgery. Claims to have done 2 on me. But Walter graduated from Kirksville and then joined O.O. in Grove City about 1915. That's a fairly accurate date of when we can say that the hospital was established. We're going to take a look at a couple homes here in a minute. One of them was back up in my old stomping grounds at Woodland Avenue, where they set up surgery, which really surprised me. Then I jumped in the car, went up and sat in front of the house and stared at it for a while. I hope nobody saw me. In 1960, for whatever reason, Dr. Rossman elected to sell out his interest in the hospital and so on, and then retired. So we weren't, this is about all the time I'm going to spend on Dr. Rossman, but please remember that he was a very important part of the Bashline Rossman Hospital and treatment in Grove City from 1915 all the way up to 1960. So he was a force in the community and deserves to be mentioned. Here's that really neat picture of Dr. A.T. Still, who was born in 1828, survived in 1917, This is OO. I just think that that's the most spectacular picture I've ever seen relative to the subject.
What did they do when she wants to know?
Well, they found a dog on a street. That is a fairly gone over human cadaver, as far as I can tell.
I think so.
Okay, so, I mean, that's the best way to learn, right? So yes, some of you probably have heard the conjured up stories about where those come from. I'm not gonna touch that. There are stories about that. But anyway, I believe that's out in Kirksville, so don't worry, all our relatives are safe. That's not good. Okay, let me, that is slide. How are we doing so far? I don't mind a little pause once in a while.
Well, I'll tell them about Dr. O. He went down to my grandpa's farm, and he always had to have a drink out of the spring. And Grandpa's farm was down where they sold plants and vegetables, what was their name, down in Harrisville. What is it?
Emerald?
Hammerlands, yes. That was my grandpa's farm, and Dr. O used to be down there.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about osteopathy. Who does not know what osteopathy is? And don't be afraid to raise your hand, because I found out a lot, I had no clue. And everybody knows, I could skip this slide. Have a nice day.
Tell us.
All right, I'm going to spoon feed you through this. Okay. All right. It gets a little wee bit technical, but I'm going to read a couple things here. Dr. Andrew Taylor Still, founder of osteopathy. He felt that there were two fundamental truths. He takes credit for discovering these truths. That the living body has the inherent ability to develop its own natural immunity to germs or their products, and an unobstructed, healthy flow of arterial blood and an unobstructed flow of arterial blood is life itself. So if everything's working, you're in good shape, okay? That seems pretty simplified. So osteopathy, Webster's definition. Let's see, I had to start at ground zero. Webster's definition, a system of medical practice based on a theory that diseases are due chiefly to loss of structural integrity, which can be restored by manipulation, supplemented by therapeutic measures. Dr. A.T. Still's emphasis, excuse me, one second. This is the most technical comment I'm going to make tonight. Dr. A.T. Still's definition emphasizes the exhaustive, it's a quote, and verifiable science considering all bodily function versus the trial and error chemical methods used in the day to merely treat symptoms. Still believed scientifically unverified medications and surgical procedures and other traditional therapeutic regimens caused more harm than good. You can see why osteopaths back in those days were unpopular. So it's somebody coming to Grove City with this, I mean, who likes the guy that comes to your club and says, this is the way we used to do it in Zillionople? That's kind of what it was, and they weren't well liked. So there was a controversy, and in fact, that still exists today, and to some degree. By diagnosing and treating the musculoskeletal system, he believed that physicians could treat a variety of diseases and spare patients the negative side effects and oftentimes avoidable death. I found it interesting also to note that at some point in Owo's career he made this statement: osteopathy does not recognize any curative value in drugs or herbs, but bases the treatment of disease upon anatomical disturbance, which produces an abnormal physiological change. Okay. Let's digest all that. Before I go to the next page, I'll just take a look at that. There are two types of medicine, sort of. The DO is a doctor of osteopathy. It's a holistic approach. They're looking at the whole person, not just your symptom. They want to know what's causing the problems. Okay. Body alignment before chemistry. An MD, the typical doctor you go to today, all the training necessary, wonderful person, minus the manipulative training. Okay. The DO gets the training and manipulation. Okay. No quiz. Don't worry. We're gonna look at a couple of systems here, and then we're gonna tie this all together. Okay. Lymphatic system. Okay. Nice little comment about that, I hope. What is the lymphatic system? Most of you have an idea. You have a lymph node that swells up, kind of hurts. And they're in embarrassing places. But anyway, the lymph system. This is a network of tissues and organs, the organs being the spleen and the thymus, that help rid the body of toxins, waste, and other unwanted materials. The primary function is to transport lymph, a fluid containing infection-fighting white blood cells throughout the body. Okay? These schematics came, I don't know if these specific ones came from what I'm about to relate to you, but a few years ago, the Chinese had a presentation called The Body. And I went down to Pittsburgh to see this presentation. And what they did, don't ask me how this occurred, they took system and they removed it from a body and they displayed it upright like that. Cardiovascular, lymph system, okay? So I thought, what better way can I explain this to you? This is the closest thing I could find to the displays that I saw when I went to see The Body. Okay, lymph system. Okay, looks all complicated, but pretty thorough. Stem to stern. Arteries and veins. Well, we all have some of those. Okay. Central nervous system. We're complicated. Okay, we're very complicated when it comes to the structure of our body. What happens if it all gets tangled up in, I'll be darned, I don't need, okay, let me see, one more. No? Okay, I can wing it. Everybody knows what a skeleton looks like, you have one, okay? You've been to the doctor's office, it's hanging there rudely in the corner somewhere in his office. All of these processes, all of that has to fit neatly inside the skeleton. So, if one of those several hundred little bones is out of whack, it's going to be pushing against one of these systems. Maybe some of them, maybe all of them. And when they do, your body, it's restricting the operation of one of these systems from doing what it's supposed to do, take care of your body. This, and so through manipulation, everybody's spine gets, or rib gets out of whack. Manipulation is putting the skeleton back in place so the various systems don't have anything pushing on them that shouldn't be pushing on them. Look at a vertebrae next time you're in that office. Look at those little holes in the vertebrae. The central nervous system goes right down the vertebrae and out the sides. If any vertebrae is twisted or whatever, that's either stretching a nerve or it's pinching against the nerve. Well, think about that on all those systems. So what has to be perfect so the body works well and heals itself, because the body has a self-healing quality. So, anyway, so do you get the idea? Was that a good way to explain that? So they manipulate the body so that the skeleton is in a proper position to permit all the other functions to work the way they were designed. Amazing. Just amazing. Okay. I can't read that right now, but these pictures, some of these pictures I took pictures upstairs in the medical room. If you don't know about it, there's a medical room up there. And just about everything that I've said so far is up there. Although I didn't get it all up there, actually did some research on it. So, anyway, they started out with various community homes where people would, they either bought the home or somebody had one, they rented to them, and they set up practice in these homes in the early days. We're talking like 1907 when OO came to the community. And these are a couple of those homes. And you can do your own reading to find out who owned them and so on. And if that was a little clearer, and I can't see it as close as I'm sitting here. But this one's on Poplar Street, and that one's up on Woodland Avenue. That's the one we sat in front of. But anyway, eventually this building on the corner of Pine Street and Center Street became the primary clinic. This is the one that I remember as a child. This is the one where we would come in to see Dad, and when he was busy, we kind of had the run of the place. So I'll tell you one story about a nurse, Susan Brown. The shortest nurse in the hospital was the commander. Okay? And she had Dorso as her executive officer. If you didn't agree with what Brown said, Dorso would take care of you, you'd disappear for a while. So, I'm running up and down.
Military nurse,
Yeah.
Dorso.
No surprise. Well, 40s. I mean, that wasn't the 40s. I was born in the 40s, but so I'm about somewhere between 8 and 10. Anyway, I'm charging up and down the hallway, and I hear a nurse on the second floor saying, "You stop running, young man." And I looked over. It was Nurse Brown, and I said, "You know who I am." I'm more humble today, but she said, "You know, I don't care who you are. You're not going to run on my floor anymore." And Dorset's standing up there like this, and it's very sheepish.
Remember the lady that would say 8 o'clock, visiting hours
Oh,
over?
yeah.
I can hear her going, and you laughed.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, it was probably my bedtime. Anyway, let's see if I have something written about that. I'm sure I do. Okay, anyway, it says there 65 beds. I actually have something nicely written. Okay. Maybe that didn't. Well, anyway, surgical suites, emergency room, full-fledged hospital operation, competing with other hospitals. And I don't mind if you don't do the other hospital. But I didn't know there was an issue when I was a kid, so I grew up totally oblivious. I was just trying to battle through adolescence and those teen years when all of this was going on. You know, when they built the new hospital, I was a pretty young guy, I was in high school.
No, excuse me, when I was growing up, I was told that that hospital was built from 3 different houses that were all hooked together.
Right. There were numerous additions, and yes, additions.
This
Numerous.
one or the other?
Yeah, the other one.
Okay,
Yeah.
this
And I think if
hospital,
you go back, you can see some of that in that picture, that there were houses there. And my great-grandmother rented one of them, and I believe before the hospital was built. And then her brother and his wife rented one. They were next door neighbors, and then Grandma always said that at some point they hooked that all together for the hospital and then added on.
Yeah, I read about all of that. I thought I'd leave those parts out, but go ahead. Imagine, this is a private institution. There's no state money, there's no guild yet. There's,
And they had nurses training too.
yeah, and that was located over
And that
here.
far one.
I think I have a picture of that, maybe. Yes, next slide.
It wasn't torn down in 65 though, was it? Was it torn down in 65?
No,
No.
I just had to look that up.
They had the doctor's offices down there.
Well, they
built
did.
this.
Yeah, everybody had, okay. I used to go in this door. They parked around here. I used to go in this door. There were offices down a short flight of steps that went along the basement area, and then upstairs, one about a half a flight up, and they went over here almost to the waiting room. Okay. And I had my broken nose fixed in one of those.
I had my tonsils out when I was 5 years old, and I had one of those rooms, I don't know if it was first or second floor on Center Street side. My brother shared the room with me. He was in a crib. He had hammered toes and had surgery there, so. But I remember it distinctly because there was a fire somewhere in town, and the fire trucks just went crazy past Center Street. I was out of my bed glued to the window watching the fire trucks.
It wasn't Pleasantville for patients down there. It was noisy. Yeah, does anybody, of course, anybody remember ether? That's not a person, that's a substance. Wow. Am I glad they went to spinals.
Thermometers they used to put in the alcohol.
Oh, yeah, they tasted like alcohol.
They tasted horrible.
Well, when I had
This thing
my
I'm
appendix-
running it.
Does it taste
That's why
now?
you drink now.
when I had my appendix out, they used tape on me, and back then my skin was real fair and delicate, you know. Oh, when they ripped that tape off, it left some on me. And what they bring in to take it off with? Alcohol.
Who did that? That had to be the other hospital.
It was some of the nurses that did it.
Well, they did have a patient harassment program going on. You fell right down, right there. Let's move on to this one. Okay, see the house on the far left? That's Dr. Fithian's old house. Okay. Everybody knows that the hospital was added to that. And the hospital up on Oak Hill was built to supplement patient demand. In other words, we ran out of room on Pine Street. This facility had 4 operating rooms, cystoscopy room, say that word, cast rooms, laboratory, x-ray rooms, a physical therapy department, obstetrical suite, 2 delivery rooms, a nursery with 12 bassinets, pediatric department with 12 beds, and business offices. Who was born there? Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you remember? What do you remember about that?
I was Amy Sagety, and I was one of the triplets.
Oh, is that right? That was a pretty exciting day for the staff.
And Dr.
Halloween.
Bashline-
Congratulations.
Halloween. That day, they delivered a single, a double, and a triple.
Oh, wow.
My goodness. No wonder they needed 12 bassinets. That's not your comment. I actually have the Bashline Memorial Hospital dedication book right here. I'm going to leave all my materials here eventually, once I get it built. But that occurred, the dedication and grand opening occurred at 2 p.m. Sunday, September 19th, 1965. Okay. Pastor ceremonies was my dad, Don Bashline. Invocation, Claire Heizenrader. Some of you might remember Reverend Heizenrader. Main speaker, Herm Rogers, fun guy. Woody Bashline commented. Fanny Bashline dedicated. And the benediction was by Stanley Harker. And the very first page is History of the Bashline Hospital. Now, if I would have seen this little book, I could have avoided a lot of research. I just found this book. nursing home. Oh, wait a minute, back up. Anecdote. Are we running out of time? It's been an hour and 10 minutes. No, it's been 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Yeah,
That's the hospital my mom worked. Is this?
okay. Well, I remember when that was being built, and I remember, honestly remember, 1965, right? I was junior in high school. I was old enough to remember my dad struggling over the plans for this hospital, the blueprints and so on, and trying to work all that out. I think at that time, he was also the surgical chief of staff. So at age 45, about this time, he has a heart attack. He's 45, I'm like 15 or 16, something like that. Anyway, he survived a long time thereafter. But that was obviously a stressful period of time for him. A little anecdote about the Pythian house. When they bought that Pythian house, that's up at my old digs. Okay, so that's about a block from the house I grew up in. This is sample. And I had a little buddy named Jeff, and I'm telling you, we found that every door in that place was locked, every window slammed down tight. We found a way to get in, and we had a ball in that big old house. I mean, it was empty, but for a couple of young kids, it was a little scary to boot. But we had fun with that, and then Bob Dodds moved in, he used to chase us away. Then they built a hospital, and this is where, if I did any working with the hospital, most of it really was here in my teen years, just giving Reed and some of the other maintenance folks headaches. I painted. One day they had me out there with one of those big spud sticks, what do you call this? Big long steel pole. Why don't you go out there and around that pool, big rocks out. Really? Big rocks? Fuck an hour, okay, I'll do anything. Didn't get rich up there. Okay, let's see, slide 32. Is this. We're actually coming toward the end. No, that's the nursing home. Okay, I think I remember that there was a little tunnel from the main building to the nursing home. I believe that's true. They graduated 60 nurses from this place. So the Bashline Hospital not only provided health care for the wide community, they were a teaching institution. Interns, residents, and nurses. So the Bashline Hospital became a worldwide known operation because these interns and residents went off to live their lives and provide medical service all around the globe. Panama, South America, Nova Scotia, Canada, and many more than I could find. So
Where's that house at?
on Center Street.
Oh,
Right
Oh,
here.
okay, the other part, okay.
Okay. Merger. Well, everybody kind of knows about the merger. Basically, you have to remember, Bashline concerned that the hospital became an association of several doctors, some moving in and out of the association, but generally around 7 physicians manned the Bashline Association Limited. Okay, so there was no state money. The owners paid for everything that went on in these hospitals. You want another x-ray machine? Cough it up, okay? How about those rich doctors running around having to pay for those things? Are they doing that anywhere else? Okay, think about that for a minute. My point was, how rich could they possibly be? I mean, people harp on that subject. You must be a rich doctor.
But they were in business, and if you're in business, you make money,
Well,
they say. I know better, I keep going.
this private hospital is self-sustaining. And through the efforts of the owners and the public, never been asked for contributions for its support. Many patients were cared for, operated on, and treated as charity cases. These aren't just penny ante charity cases. This is serious operations. And without any state appropriation, at the sole expense of the owners. Okay? I'm proud of that. You should be proud of that. That is part of your community's legacy. Your friends, your neighbors, the physicians, the staff, everybody working at the hospital, doing what they could do to provide the best health care possible in your community. Some of it had to be done for free. It's still done for free today. They just go to the ER, right? Right? So they weren't any hugely different. It's just where'd the money come from? Okay? People forget that. Okay, anyway, when the state comes down with codes change all the time. Wheelchairs are getting wider because people are getting wider, so let's widen the hallways. Really? Have to knock out a wall for a wheelchair when it worked just great for the one back in the 50s? Yes, Mr. Administrator, you have to do that. Oh, okay. Now they have a meeting, where's that money coming from? So you're getting the idea, right? You need a stairwell, you need a fire escape. On this side of the hospital, you have to do this over here, do that over there. Oftentimes, a business like this might merge, possibly because there aren't enough patients. Grove City's been a pretty stable population for years, somewhere around 8,000 to 10,000, depending on whether or not the college is in session. So I wouldn't say that it was a lack of patients. I think it had something to do with money. I don't know that for sure. Remember, I was a high school kid. I didn't even know this was going on. I'm just, like you, surmising. You know, what's logical? So anyway, the community decided to merge the facilities. The Bashline Association was paid off on certain, and we ended up with the United Community Hospital. Ultimately, they got rid of the whole thought of United, so nobody ever asks anymore, United with what? Okay. Grove City Medical Center. So, today, not a brick remains for many Bashline institution, Bashline Hospital institution, and United is gone. Okay, so for me, that stands out. But we have our hospital and we have our history. Okay, and that's why we're here tonight, to learn about that and try to appreciate that a little bit. So what is our legacy? Remember the three doctors? Well, Don was in the Second World War, based in Guam. And when Guadalcanal and the Solomons and all those islands were being shelled, and all of our sailors and soldiers were being mutilated, those who could survive the boat trip to Guam met Dr. Don Bashline. He was a very young doctor. Okay? Graduated from college in 1940. So right out of med school, right to the war. Okay, so imagine the catastrophic injury that he faced on a daily, hour-by-hour basis. Doing things that doctors, surgeons may not have to face their entire career. He ended up getting all of this. This is a plus for him, okay, career-wise, to have this opportunity. Horrible event, good thing for him. And many of those cases certainly were trauma cases. So oftentimes, when there was a trauma situation, injury, the Bashline Hospital could deal with it. I don't think he was the only one with those experiences. I'm sure he was a teaching physician, so I know that he shared his knowledge with others. I've heard those stories. So anyway, long story short, one of our legacies is that we treated, when I say we, I mean we, not me. Holiday Inn Express, remember? I don't know anything about medicine, but I know about legacy. This community treated trauma at the Bashline Hospital. I'm not gonna say they didn't treat trauma at the city hospital, but I have a feeling if they used helicopters back in the day, you'd see more going from the city hospital down to Pittsburgh than you would see going from Bashline Hospital. Unsubstantiated, I'm biased. First female osteopathic surgeon, Dr. B.J. White. Incredible. You're a female physician in a male-dominated profession. Where are you going to get a job? Who wants you to operate on that? Who wants a female co-pilot and a female captain? So I've seen all that transpire over the years. They had the same issues. So B.J. White struck out on a very courageous endeavor to become an osteopathic surgeon. Grove City, Pennsylvania. I just think that's awesome. And the Bashline Hospital gave her that opportunity.
Was she in the military?
I don't believe so. I don't think so. I wish she would have come.
How old would she be now?
Pardon me?
How old would she be now?
That'd be a guess.
Probably 90?
Well, I'm 60, I'm 68. I'll bet you she's at least 10 years older than me, because I remember when I was living in a community, prior to going to the Air Force, that she was working at the hospital. So I've known her since her first days, but I was a young man at the time. So she's got at least, she's close to 80 in that area.
She's around 80.
I didn't ask. I was told not to.
I was. Talk well.
Pat Bashline knew what she was doing. Okay, we've already talked about it's a teaching institution. That's wonderful. What we hear back from people, this group of people that meet once a month in the morning at some local restaurant for breakfast, they hear back from our employees. So I go to those and I hear back. 134 interns. I don't know how many surgical residents. 60 nursing school graduates. The holistic approach to healthcare, osteopathy. Okay. We're not only going to give you the Advil to make your headache go, we're going to find out why you have a headache. Oh, you had a tumor. Oh, we'll fix that. Back in the day, if whatever they're using for pain didn't work, you got some more opiate or something else. I don't know. A unique private osteopathic institution. The two words that are important there are unique and private. Okay? 65 years of osteopathic health. So an osteopath, they go to meds, they go to osteopathic school, they get every single bit of training that a medical doctor gets, plus the manipulative skills to correct your skeleton so all those systems can work. Okay? Questions? Comments? Stories? So there's some tributes. This is a tribute by Dwight D. Eisenhower. Can anybody not read that? I'll give you a second to read that. I like dying, but I was a pretty young, I was 12 years old in 1960. Okay, anyway, that's one of the tributes remaining. Remember, not a brick remaining. I don't even have a brick at home. I have a hose nozzle from one of the fire hoses. Really? And a couple mementos from my father's office. And that's it. I was away in my job or in the Air Force when they raised both buildings, so my brothers gave me the nozzles. I hold them close to them. Another tribute's located downtown. Remember when Grove City put these up in front of some of the stores on Broad Street? This one is there. Dr. O. Bashline started the first osteopathic practice in several private homes in 1907. In 1915, his nephew, Dr. Walter F. Rossman, joined the practice. The Bashline Hospital opened in 1923 with 23 beds on the corner of South Center and East Pine Streets. Just coincidentally, my wife's father was the founder and owner of WEDA-FM, Jim Perry, mayor of Grove City in the 70s. If you walk right around, his tribute is on the same one. Coincidence, amazing. So, some remaining tribute. Pine Street and Oak Hill facilities have been raised. Only the earliest facilities on Willen Avenue and Poplar Street remain. A memorial sits on Broad Street, we just looked at. And when you get, if you have not had a chance to go upstairs and look through the medical room, please do so. We all have Dr. Betty Jo White to thank, and Gary Forsyth to thank for constructing this room, putting it together in a very readable fashion with all kinds of artifacts to look at. And we're constantly building.
Do you want some?
Jane had just talked to me and said that
I'd like to share a story too. It wasn't just the hospital. Bashline's owned 3 farms in the area. I think they were all 3 in Findlay Township. And my dad's sister and her husband ran one of them back in the 40s and 50s. And their names were Bud and Maureen Henry. And
That's where I saw that we're standing on the first floor of the barn looking down at the bull with the ring in his nose.
Mhm.
We taunted that bull until he pulled his nose right out of that ring.
They raised the beef and dairy cattle to provide milk and beef for the hospital. I believe they had pigs, chickens, eggs, all that was homegrown. And then I think the other 2 farms were primarily just crops to feed all the animals that were on the one that my aunt and uncle had. And that farm is located, Blaine Richardson has it now, it's right next to Legacy Banquet Facility.
Oh, yeah.
Is where that was. And my dad lived there with them from 46 to 55. So he
So I wonder
he
how-
grew up on that. He was there from, he was 16 when he went to live with them.
Yeah. I've been in and out of the barn,
Mhm.
the house. I remember being pelted by the corn as it was being harvested, and that, why would I climb back in that machine with that corn cobs blasting out of there 50 miles an hour? But I did do that.
So
And,
they were really self-sufficient that way, and other people in the community were employed on those farms too.
So you don't think maybe food from farm to hospital, do you? I don't know.
And it was interesting, Uncle Bud would always say anytime they had a new calf born, if it was female, it would be named after one of the doctor's wives.
Great story. I was counting on people volunteering some stories, so if you're a little shy and you're still sitting on a story, this is no time to be shy. This is the time to share those stories.
I have a story when I first moved to Grove City. I was a young nurse and I got a job at a community hospital, and I was working evenings. And one night, an ambulance brought a patient, and the doctor was Dr. Bullfine, who was from Slippery Rock, but I didn't know Dr. Bullfine because he never made rounds in that community hospital. When I called him for orders, oh, no, because they took him to the wrong hospital. I called them back and tell them to take that patient to the right. That was my first, I didn't
Glad
really
you said that.
know all this.
I wonder how they did on right leg, left leg. I'm gonna have a procedure done. This is it. Right there, so a bullseye. Anybody else? I have nothing else to do, I'm retired.
I have a question. Are there osteopaths around here today?
There are osteopaths around. I didn't mean to suggest that they don't graduate people from Kirksville anymore.
Yeah, hi.
There's one right here. And there are a number, there are a number of colleges in the area.
Yeah, I
Erie
think
has an
so.
osteopathic facility.
Yeah.
St.
Philadelphia.
Kitts in the Islands is an osteopathic teaching facility. So they're all around, there are plenty of osteopaths. The thing I was trying to impress on the audience was that osteopaths don't hang their shingle and say osteopath. They say Dio, what's that? So if you walk up to the hospital and you say, I have a sore and I need MD. Well, I know what an MD is, so I'll go there. Dio's the same guy. He can just twist it back into shape, and the other guy might pour arsenic on it.
That's why I said, when you ask who do you go to if your back hurts, and you said osteopath, and I shook my head, yes. The reason is
I saw
because
that.
Dr. Dunkel
Kenny Dunkel.
was an osteopathic
Sure
doctor.
was.
And that's who I went to when my back hurt.
A great man. Yeah, he was great.
He was.
There are a number in the area, and I have the names, but you can look it up in the whole pages for yourself. But they're out there, and I actually went to one about 3 years ago, and he said, "What are you here for?" And I said, "Treatment." And he goes, "Okay, treatment. Lie down on the table." And he did a few manipulative maneuvers, and he made one pop. And he was pretty proud of that, and I was thankful. But that reminds me of my only story about osteopathy as it relates to my body. If you complained about anything to O.O. Bashline, you could be a bedwetter and complain about that, and he had a treatment for that. Well, I don't know what I was complaining about, but I'm about 10 years old, and anybody not have, anybody not ever get manipulated by a chiropractor? Okay, here's the deal. They get you all twisted and bent so that you start to look like one of those pretzels, and then they have a little pressure point, and they just go, and everything cracks all at once. Okay, then they do the neck one. That's really exciting. And so, but when you have a problem, you're going to need one of these people. I choose an osteopath just because of the background, because of the history. It's my dad would buy Japanese products. All those kids, okay? I come from a family with that heritage. I choose an osteopath. Do whatever you want to do. That's just me. Skip.
When we moved to Grove City in 1971, I was waiting for the moving truck. About 8 o'clock in the morning, a man knocks on my door and welcomed me to town and asked me what church I went to. And I said Presbyterian. What political party do you belong to? And I said Republican.
Let me guess.
And then he said, do you go to doctors or osteopaths? And I had no idea what an osteopath was. No, I was.
Is that the way you worded it?
Pardon me?
Is that the way you worded it? Doctors or
Yes.
osteopaths?
Yes.
See?
Those are
That's
direct quotes.
interesting.
Yeah. And I said, I go to doctors. You know, I didn't know what an osteopath was.
Well, they were bone doctors. What else could they be? That's what they were called. They were disparaged for years and years and years. Even back in the 1800s. The progress of medicine, I read, was slow at best. Louis Pasteur, okay? Dr. Lister, who might be the father of aseptic surgery, septic surgery, whatever, recognized germs. These people came after the Civil War. Or you could have your leg chopped off, and maybe that was a great idea at the time. They bandaged it up. Some guys would survive it. Many others suffer gangrene issues. They did not understand that the little world wins. You have to the little world, the germs, the bacteria, the problems caused by the things we can't see. These people knew about this and had a devil of a time trying to convince the rest of their associates. Hence, they were made fun of, disparaged in many ways, including O.O. Bashline in this community. So there is literature out there published by him addressing that very subject. And he was disgusted, quite frankly, with that side of the house that wouldn't take a scientific approach and a holistic approach to medical care. Okay? I just didn't share all that with you, but that's what was going on. He fought for that from the earliest days, from the early 1900s, and those people are still with us today.
My dad didn't think there was anybody, any doctor like your dad. To this
No,
day,
thanks
he
for that.
still says, I wish Dr. Dunn was still here. No, he did like Dr. Dunkel. He thought he was pretty close, but
He was
he
great.
still talks about your dad. So,
I hear those stories.
I have another little story from my family related to O.O. Bashline. And my sister, Nancy, when she was 4, 5, 6, she swallowed a nickel and it went down the windpipe. And my father took her to O.O. Bashline. He said, well, I really can't take care of this. You need somebody that can do this. And so they took him down to Pittsburgh and they got the nickel out. And it wasn't maybe 6 months, a year later, she's got another nickel in. So she took, and my father took him to O.O. and he said, well, I have the instruments now to take that nickel out, but I've never used it before. So my father, being as he was, he said, do it. Because at that time, this would be probably in the late 40s, it cost $200 to get that nickel out down in Pittsburgh. So he wouldn't have to go to Pittsburgh. And so Dr. O.O. Bashline used a rigid esophagoscope or bronchoscope and put it down, got the nickel and took it out. And I really think that he didn't charge them anything because that was the first time he used the instrument.
Did you sing that song to her? Put another nickel.
He'd already eat quarters from now on.
I would make just kind of a general comment since I went to Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine, graduated in
Please do.
1968, and was in the midst of the medical world at that time. That was right when Medicare came in, and so I would say this in regarding osteopathy in relationship to the whole development of the medical field as it's been emerging. Because when O.O. Bashline was trained and when A.T. Still started osteopathy, you explained it well. There was, hit and miss, trial and error situation. That's the way it was. And but as information and knowledge emerged, that there was more and more understanding of the body's functions. And actually one of the key things was that the body has most of the mechanisms to heal itself, and you had to mimic that, and you learned how to do it. Things like epinephrine, that's part of the body, the various hormones, that type of thing. And you got around about 1915, and there was a study put in by the government, investigated all the medical schools and osteopathic schools. There was quite a number, over 400, and they were all diploma mills. Many of them were diploma mills, and they shut down virtually all the medical schools and all the DO schools except for, I think, 4 osteopathic schools and 15, 20 MD schools. And then that time on, things developed much more appropriately in terms of the medical field. And so when I was in school, a lot of things had developed, and there is a lot of virtually similarities. I mean, the human body, we both studied the same thing, and it's just how you applied your medical knowledge to the human body. And as time went on, immunology was very important, getting vaccinations. That has wiped out so many diseases that it's hard to really imagine it otherwise. Antibiotics is, this is 1940s, 50s, 60s, and so the understanding the medical world, virtually the DOs were really far ahead in some aspects of the understanding the human body, but as time went on, everybody's pretty much in the same playing field. Now, the relationship of the manipulation, it's an important aspect of the human body, structure and function. And he pointed out if there was pressure on nerves or arteries, such it wouldn't work right. So A.T. Still had this rule of the artery was supreme. If you didn't get enough circulation, the body couldn't heal itself. And so you did a manipulation for that purpose, but it also affected even down to the cellular level. It wasn't just bones.
Sure.
It's the whole relationship of enough circulation. So as time went on, there were a lot of very much similar things related to DOs and MDs, and they all should get along, and they virtually do now. And just from my own personal thing, I was, along with my partner, Dr. McDowell, who did his internship at Bashline Hospital, and does still come to those monthly breakfasts as the nurses and doctors.
Bill McDowell from Sharon.
Yes.
Bill McDowell from
Bill
Sharon.
McDowell, yeah. We worked together for 25 years, and we were among the first physicians. I think Dr. Stein was the first one to get on the staff of Sharon Regional Hospital, Sharon, I guess it was Sharon General at that time. And so we cooperated through that endeavor. We did a lot of deliveries, and they closed down the one in the Osteopathic Hospital, so we didn't have any place to go but there, and so we got on there. And one of the things that happened in my life, I was president of Mercer County Medical Society for 1 year. And there's other DOs that became members of the medical society. And Mercer County was the last county in Pennsylvania to accept DOs into the medical society of the county.
Told you so.
But today, I don't think you will find much of a problem anywhere.
You don't hear it. Remember, I was an adolescent. And I know about it. I didn't know about it then. But thank you for that. What a great clarification.
Well, I want to thank Doug for being here, even though
Happy
he
to
said
do
he
it.
didn't know a whole lot about medical when he slept in Holiday Inn. As you've seen, he put a lot of time, a lot of research, and a great presentation here tonight.
Well, thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
One more thing about Dr. White. Dr. White, we had the rooms upstairs, if you've never been up there. There's certain, like I said, 13 or 14 rooms upstairs, and one's like the college room and the school room, and different rooms. And we had 2 storage rooms, and Dr. White, one for a medical room. And we said, Dr. White, we don't have any space. But then we said, well, let's go down and look at the basement. Maybe we can clean up and fix it in the basement. But she went down, no, too damp, it's not good enough. So anyhow, finally we gave in and said, we'll move some stuff out, we'll put the storage somewhere else. Then we started getting some calls from some nurses or doctors, or somebody was stopped in and said, what is it you want? We said, what are you talking about? Well, Dr. White's been calling. And so so it ended up upstairs, you've been upstairs, there's an old wooden wheelchair that came from the hospital. There's the display case that came from the hospital. Then Dr. White, she framed all the pictures up there. She paid for that, did all that to frame all the pictures, made all the little labels. If you open the display case, the little labels, the stroke instruments, she's done all that. Somebody here asked a while ago if she was in the service at all. And I think about that, and I said she could have been a Marine drill instructor. She could have been one.
Having worked in close quarters with her to build that room up there, I can see why you would know that.
Johnny Allen, just thank you, and thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome, it's a pleasure.
Now there's some, I don't know what we have, cider?
There's regular iced tea on the left side of the thing, and there's apple cider on the right, and in the jug in behind, there's sugar-free iced tea.
And if you haven't been upstairs, you're welcome to go upstairs. We
One
have a
more
lift.
thing about Dr. D'Angelo, if any of you remember him. He had cleats on his shoes. You could hear him coming down the hall. And if you were his patient, you saw him every day. But I could still hear him coming down the hall.
That's a special way to
And he
walk.
kept in touch until he died. He wrote.
I just got a cat's meow of the hospital on 7th
Oh, you did?
Street. Out of all good things. They had a bunch of them and of different things in town, and they were just giving them away. And I saw that one and I thought, I'm gonna have
There you
that
go.
one.
A little black cat.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else? Thanks again for coming up. Let's go eat.
Okay.
Say hello to this.